This is First Contact, Stories of the Call Center. And I know from you, you've learned across different verticals, right? And you say, hey, I don't focus on a certain vertical. We're not specific to this is the industry that we serve. But you say, look, you learn from all the industry that you serve, and there's things that can go from one thing to another and that you can learn that is actually transferable. Is there anything that comes to mind that you've learned that you know somewhat is transferable regardless of industry or vertical?
I mean, process of the process of CX, right, is for the most part straightforward, right? Make the interaction with a client as seamless as possible so they can get the answers they want with as little friction as possible, right? That's really what you could boil down CX to. What we have found and why we haven't kind of verticalized or why we haven't standardized on just working in the medical field or the financial field is that, it's probably encompassed best with a quick story. We worked with a client. They came to us and said, we're going to a CCAS solution, Frank. I said, okay, that's interesting. Let's go through why and what and how. And when you got into it, they were making 2 generational leaps in technology. They had an old phone system, still working on PRIs, no VoIP capability within the system, and now they're going to go fully cloud enabled for their contact center. They had a switchboard, as it was, right? They had a switchboard. Yeah. And, this was a couple of years ago. And they'd been working that way for 30 years. And the reason they worked that way for 30 years is because it worked. And they didn't even know what they didn't know. So all of their processes and procedures and capabilities were limited by that technology. They had wonderful people, but they just couldn't get the job done because the technologies were really limiting. So one of the reasons why I think, to the heart of your question is we're able at that point to come in and say, we've worked with a retail organization, we've worked with a financial organization, we've worked with a hospital organization, we've worked with a manufacturer and distributor. These are things that they're doing that you could look at and build into your business. We work with a woman by the name of Amanda Russo, and she always says, no matter what, if a business is a mirror image of yours, there still is no boilerplate answer for that business, right? Law firms are law firms are law firms, but no 2 law firms are the same. And everything kind of comes from that for us, right? You have to do what's right for your business, your people, your culture, and which is why we don't just work in law firms, because even if we just work with law firms, it would still be very different for every single one. There is no template for an industry.
Yeah, and I think that gets to the heart of what you do, right? You have to have that knowledge to go in and be able to start pulling that stuff out that is going to be different, even though that person says, well, I'm just in this industry. Don't you have something out of the box that, this industry does? And, a perfect example that we had with a client recently was they were doing something in a very particular way to raise money through fundraising, right? And their approach was very manual. They built a process and a system around it. And that process and system made it so that it really delayed the amount of time it could get until they got that pledge, until they actually got the money. And the reason that they had that process built is they just didn't have the right PCI system in place so that the people that were making the call could be compliant and taking the payment. So that this huge process of people and systems in play and checks and balances. And we said, well, forget the technology for a minute. What if you could just do this while you're on the call and then not have to mail them stuff and wait till they got that stuff back and then being able to get confirmation? And they're going, well, that'd be great. So it's not about us having all the answers, but I'm sure that in one industry that takes payments and you figure out how they take it or how they route calls or how they manage their staff and how they stagger potentially their timing and remote work, that those things could still be learned and shared with other industries and verticals. And that's what's great about what you're doing.